Hi, I'm Terry Davis. I'm the smartest programmer that's ever lived. I was chosen by God to make his temple.
This is Terry A. Davis, a genius programmer who became an internet legend. After graduating from college, he was on a path to become the next Steve Jobs, until he started experiencing what he called revelations from God. After some time, he was admitted to a psychiatric ward and diagnosed with schizophrenia. The temple that he was talking about in the intro is an operating system called Temple OS that Terry created all by himself over the course of 10 years. He claims that he was ordered by God to create a successor to the second temple as an operating system. To finish the development of his OS, he wrote 121,000 lines of code. A computer engineer compared this accomplishment to a one-man built skyscraper. That's why the statement that he is the smartest programmer that has ever lived might not be exaggerated. But how did Terry become the internet legend that he is today? To answer that question, we need to briefly look back at his life before the illness. Terry A. Davis was born in December 1969 in West Allis, Wisconsin. Through an elementary school gifted program, he had the opportunity to use an Apple II computer. Later, as a teenager, he learned the assembly language on a Commodore 64. In 1994, he graduated from Arizona State University with a master's degree in electrical engineering. He worked for Ticketmaster during his college years and for a couple of years after graduating. In 1996, he was admitted to a psychiatric ward for the first time after developing delusions concerning aliens and the CIA. Later in his life, he was interviewed by Vice in an article titled God's Lonely Programmer. There he said, "I started seeing people following me around in suits and stuff. It just seemed something was strange." He became so paranoid about the mysterious figures that seemed to follow his every move that he decided to leave the city. Terry abandoned his car in the desert after he thought the radio was trying to communicate with him. After walking aimlessly along the road, he was picked up by a police officer, but he jumped out of the police car, breaking his collarbone. Terry was taken to a hospital where he overheard the doctors discussing artifacts in his X-ray scans, which Terry interpreted as alien artifacts, prompting him to flee the hospital, but he was immediately arrested after attempting to hijack a truck. While in prison, he attempted to short-circuit the cell door by sticking the frame from his glasses into the electrical outlet, but it didn't work because he was wearing non-conductive frames. After the whole incident, Davis was admitted to a mental hospital for 2 weeks. From 1996 to 2003, he would have maniac episodes like this roughly every 6 months. Also, the paranoia over federal agents stalking him would continue to haunt him for the rest of his life. Somewhere in the early 2000s, Terry started working on Temple OS, after being commanded to do so by God. He claims that God gave him very specific requirements for his operating system, such as a 640 by 480 resolution, 16-bit colors, and a single audio voice. Davis even created his own programming language called Holy C, which was a modified version of C and C++. Terry's God communicated with him through randomly generated sets of words, from which he derived meaning and answers. He believed that the divine world manifests itself through randomness. Creating Temple OS took him a decade. The final product was a very impressive piece of software that featured multiple games, a melody creation software, and even a flight simulator, among other programs inspired by the Bible. Building such a complex operating system by a single person is an extraordinary task. To put it into perspective, an operating system like Windows 7 had thousands of people working on it for multiple years. With that being said, Temple OS might even be one of the most complex pieces of software ever created by a single developer. Temple OS was received positively by critics. OS News editor Croc Kamen said, "I'm glad that operating systems like Temple OS still exist, in that it shows that computing can still be a hobby. Why is everybody so serious these days?" Jesse Hicks from Vice closed his article about Terry Davis and his creation with the words, Terry Davis has offered the world a temple to a God who speaks only to him and is still waiting for everyone else to listen. In one of the blog posts on his website, Terry claimed that the operating system had been downloaded 10,000 times over a course of 3 years. He also wrote, "No evidence anyone has installed it. I'm in a CIA prison." Such disturbing and random statements, which were clearly the result of his mental condition, are what turned Terry into an internet meme. Davis would regularly post vlogs and livestream on YouTube, discussing computer science-related topics, but also documenting his own life. His frequent use of racial and homophobic slurs, intertwined with a very impressive knowledge of programming, led to Terry becoming a controversial yet beloved figure in the programming world. Clips of his rants have gathered billions of views on YouTube and TikTok, and Temple OS even got recognized by the biggest programming and technology channels, like Fireship or Linus Tech Tips. From the start of his mental health problems back in 1996 up until 2017, Terry was living with his parents in Las Vegas, collecting social security payments. After refusing to take his medications, Terry's parents presented him with an ultimatum. Either he takes his medicine or leaves the house. Terry chose the latter. He started living in a van, still vlogging while accessing the internet from a public library. His fans would bring him food and supplies, and some even offered him shelter, which he refused. In August of 2018, Terry posted his final video.
Well, I'm King Terry, and it's pretty rough living homeless, and it's a very pure town, and must have been an extreme shock to them to see such a horribly sick person come in here and pollute everything, and so well, it's good to be king. Wait, maybe. I think maybe I'm just like a little bizarre little person who walks back and forth. Whatever, you know. But
shortly after Terry's last video was posted, the Dahl Chronicle published a short story about an unnamed homeless man who was struck by a train. Naita Cecil, a reporter for the newspaper, was bombarded with phone calls from concerned fans asking whether the man who died was Davis, which the newspaper later confirmed in a follow-up piece. On the evening of August 11, 2018, Terry was walking alongside the railroad tracks in the Dahl, where he was struck and killed by a Union Pacific train. The police report states that Davis was walking with his back toward the train and that he turned before the moment of impact. They couldn't determine whether his death was suicide or accidental, but the train engineer believed that Terry was on the train tracks deliberately. After the information about his death surfaced online, he was honored by his fans in multiple tributes posted to social media. One of those tributes can be heard right now in the background, a piano cover of the Temple OS hymn created by a fan. Terry A. Davis was certainly a controversial figure, but also an indisputable programming genius who created something extraordinary. I think his work was best summed up by himself in the Vice article. What people are going to read is, it's about a pathetic schizophrenic who made a crappy operating system. My perspective is, God said I made his temple.